World Myth Geometry. Introduction. This story will not touch sacral geometry of amazing geometric figures, as it is studied well enough. I believe it is time for us to move on. I propose to pass to that which is not yet investigated and cognized. Namely, to pass to studying of geometry of the world myth. What is myth? Without scientific definitions, let's say simply, myth is a petrified trace of consciousness of ancient people. The consciousness of distant predecessors left us their imprint in the form of various mythological plots and images. Centuries and millennia passed, human consciousness changed. Accordingly, the plots and images changed. By now, the whole ocean of world mythology has been accumulated. It covers the work of different peoples, cultures, languages, and epochs. It appears before us as a single immense array of world myth. In this ocean it is difficult to navigate and easy to get lost. Just like the ocean of water, the mythological ocean keeps in its gloomy abyss many mysteries waiting for clues and analytical keys. At different times, researchers have tried to offer different keys to uncover the structure of the world myth. The attempts turned out to be interesting, but unsuccessful. These stories can be the subject of a separate story. Here we will make a completely new analysis of mythology, with the same purpose of finding some structure of the world myth, still unknown to our days. Let us start from the simplest point. From the point where each of us is at this moment. What do we see around us? Some kind of space filled with different objects. It can be a room, any room, a street, a public garden, or anything else. In all cases, we know that the space that surrounds us has three spatial dimensions: length, width, and height. Conventionally, this can be depicted in the figure as follows. Since space has three dimensions, this space can be called three-dimensional space. Next, our drawing is on a flat sheet of paper. The plane of the sheet has only two dimensions, length and width, without height. Conventionally, it can be depicted like this. That is, the surface of the sheet is a flat space, with two dimensions. So this space can be called a two-dimensional space. Okay. We represent length, width, and height conventionally by lines. A line has no height or width, only length. Like in this simple drawing. That is, the line space is an extension in one direction, has only one dimension. Therefore, the line space can be called one-dimensional space. So, and how do we represent the absence of both length, width, and height? That's right. A dot. A bold dot. Like in the drawing. Due to the absence of any dimensions at the point, the space of the point can be called a null-dimensional space. That's good. Now we just need to show the absence of the point. The unstained whiteness of the paper will be a conventional representation of both the absent point and the absent space. This total absence is conveyed by one word, emptiness. Conventionally, let us draw the void as an infinite number of small particles of vacuum flying unknown where. To continue the numerical series of our spaces, three-dimensional, two-dimensional, one-dimensional, zero-dimensional, let us turn to the abstract language of mathematics. Mathematics assigns to imaginary quantities the sign -1. The space of emptiness does not exist, that is, it is an imaginary space, an imaginary quantity. Therefore, the space of emptiness can be called a minus-dimensional space. Thus, we have a number of spaces lined up. Minus-dimensional, zero-dimensional, one-dimensional, two-dimensional, three-dimensional. One more space should be added to this row, four-dimensional spacetime. Conventionally, it is depicted as follows. That is, the dimension of time is added to the three spatial dimensions. This four-dimensional space for our perception is not visual like the previous spaces. The concept of four-dimensional space comes from the theory of relativity. This space is understood as a three-dimensional space associated with one more dimension, time. The connection between three-dimensionality and time begins to appear at near-light speeds. Depending on the speed, all linear dimensions of objects can increase or decrease, the trajectories of motion curve. In our ordinary life, far from near-light speeds, we do not notice four-dimensional effects, but we will remember about them, as they will be useful at consideration of some mythological plots and images. So, we get a series of 6 spaces: -dimensional, 0-dimensional, 1-dimensional, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional. As in the figure. All these spaces differ from each other by such an important feature as the number of dimensions. At this point, for mathematical rigor of presentation, we will need to introduce the mathematical notion of dimensionality of space into the story. But we will not pay too much attention to the mathematical description of the question, as this will lead us away and weigh down the narrative. Let's note only that the dimensionality of our spaces coincides with the number of dimensions we have already found in these spaces. Therefore, for the sake of brevity, we will use the term dimensionality of space. It will be useful for us and will allow us not to get confused when analyzing the mythological image of the world tree. In passing, let us pay attention to the fact that out of all 6 spaces the three-dimensional space is actual and dominant for our consciousness. But it was not always so. And now let's proceed to the most interesting thing. To the answer to the question, why do we need all this? What is the connection between the considered spaces and the world mythology? At first glance, there is no connection. However, at attentive, meditative consideration of this question, the connection is revealed. The connection is the most direct and immediate. If we cast a row of our 6 spaces, like a large fishing net, over the vast array of world myth, we will discover surprising regularities. The first is that the entire infinite and confusing array of mythological plots and images is easily stratified into 6 mythological layers. These layers are inhabited by different mythological characters. From the point of view of the characters, they do not live in a layer, but in an entire universe. Following them, we will also, for the sake of brevity, call each layer a universe. Second, each of the 6 universes has at its core one of the 6 spaces we have considered, is based on that space as its foundation. Third, each of the 6 universes is based not only on the foundation of its own space, but also has as a foundation its own system of ethical values, inherent only to this universe. Fourth, each of the 6 universes includes its own mythological plots and images belonging only to it. Before proceeding to the consideration of each of the 6 universes, it is necessary to make 3 important clarifications: about ethics, about physical space, about the subjective space of human consciousness. So, about ethics. Each of the 6 universes is based on its own system of ethical values, inherent only to this universe. Here it is necessary to define the concept of ethics. In any dictionary on ethics one can find various scientific definitions of ethics. We need the broadest, most universal ethical principle, capable of uniting all human ideas about the universe, from the most archaic to the modern. In modern terms, such an ethical principle, reverence for life, in the sense of a universal cosmic ethics, was formulated by Albert Schweitzer. True ethics embraces the whole world. All ethics goes back to one basic ethical principle, the principle of high preservation and maintenance of life. Let us rely on this understanding of ethics. Everything that contributes to the high preservation and maintenance of life, its development, is good, and the opposite is evil. Next, a clarification about physical space. Since in all historical times we have lived and live in physical space, we consider such spaces in the myth that have a clear physical interpretation: the void, point, line, plane, three-dimensional volume, four-dimensional space of the theory of relativity. Moreover, these 6 spaces have not only a clear physical interpretation, but also appear in full compliance with such concepts of modern physics as spacetime continuum, quantum wave dualism, quantum transition, anthropic principle and others. It testifies that in different historical times man reflected the same physical reality in different ways, by different mythological plots and images. Summarizing all the above, let us fix once again. The following universes are stable structure-like formations in the world myth. Minus-dimensional universe, universe empty. A zero-dimensional universe, a point universe. One-dimensional universe, line universe. Two-dimensional universe, plane universe. Three-dimensional universe, volume universe. Four-dimensional universe, universe spacetime. As has already been said, each of these universes is expressed only through its own inherent mythological plots and images. Each of these universes is rigidly and unambiguously connected with one and only one system of ethical values. The stadial change of universes historically occurs from a universe with a lower dimensionality to a universe with a higher dimensionality and more humane ethics. The events of the dramatic change from the previous universe to the next, the actual experienced and dominant one, are also reflected in various mythological stories. The continuation of our story will be devoted to finding these universes in the vast material of world mythology.